doing the presentation on our release that is coming out tomorrow on August 26th, release 8.17. We're going to start with the GDS linking. So GDS linking is your global distribution system. The different ones we have for Synexus, Windsurfer, Inlinks, TravelClick. Then we have the IDSs such as the Booking.com and the Expedias. Also, sorry, Siteminder in there as well. So traditionally, we have been handling whenever a property has a new rate plan that they need to link, you would send in an email and someone from our support department would do so. We're now going to be opening this up to our clients under the GDS linking. Now, do know that this will not be an automatic feature turned on as of tomorrow. In the release notes, and I'll talk about today, for those interested in the GDS linking and managing it at the property level, you'll be contacting Brock Martin in our office to make sure that this feature is a good fit for your property. For some properties, it may be that RSI will continue to manage the linking, but Brock is kind of the gateway to go through to have those discussions for your property and what is best. And as well, because there is going to be a training component to it, I'm really just giving you a broad overview of it today and what is possible, but there will be a training component because each GDS does have its little particulars, especially Booking.com and Siteminder are a little bit different for the linking. And certainly, you know, you want to control as well who has access to the GDS linking. You're going to have probably your revenue manager or GM or sales manager, whoever is the person that is managing your third-party site, your GDS interface. That's probably the person that this is going to be most suited for. So this is kind of a snapshot of what it looks like. Here I have my GDS types. So if I switch from Synexus over to Siteminder, so as I said, Siteminder is a little bit different because Siteminder has channels. And I'm just going to go back to Synexus here. And this little weird thing happening over on the left-hand side under rates, this will not be in there tomorrow. Just for the webinar, we couldn't address it, but it will be addressed by tomorrow. So here I have every single rate plan that is going to be in RoomKey is going to show up in here. Inactive rate plans are going to show up in red, and we will be looking at filtering those out as well, or at least putting a checkbox to hide inactive rates at some point. We do have filtering over on the left-hand side, so if you want to filter down just to a specific rate, so for instance, if I unselect everything and then decide I just want to go to my best available rate, then I can see here my best available rate. GDS is linked for my 4 room types here. Here is the GDS rate code, and I'm linking it to a client type within the that comes from your system, from RoomKey. So basically, you're taking the code from your GDS, putting it in here, and then you're telling RoomKey when the reservation flows into the system, what client type do you want that to go to? And if you choose a corporate client type, then you would look at which corporate you want to attach. So right now, if I switch this over to corporate, then I can see the corporates that I have in the system as well. But like I said, there would be a full training component with this. Brock Martin, it is bmartin@roomkeypms.com is who you want to reach out to, and that will be in the release notes tomorrow about doing this. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. The benefit, obviously, for the property is that they can immediately do the linking of the rates at the time, especially if you're looking at, you know, when our office hours are not or our office is not open, you can do so yourself. Now, getting into the second part of this, I am going to keep this open because I want to talk about a change that we made to Synexus integration, and we will be making this change to the other integrations as well. And it has to do with whether or not you upload rates. And the best way to describe this is I'm going to open up my AAA rate. Now let's say that I also had my AAA rate set up on Synexus. Okay, now let's say that my AAA rate is set up as 10% off of bar within RoomKey. So those of you who know the rate area, we have the rate tiering where we're setting the AAA rate as 10% off of bar. So if I leave the interface like this, we are going to load up the values for our best available rate, and we're going to load up the values for AAA rate. So anytime we're sending more data up to the GDS, I mean, the amount of steps that it gets through to get to the guest computers, you know, it's going from the interface into the GDS into the switch into Apollo, Galileo, WorldSpan, Amadeus. Then it's going into another switch and then to the guest computer. And then with IDS, I think there's one switch step that is taken out there, but the number of steps it makes to get to the guest computer can be quite a bit. So anytime we can reduce the amount of data that we're sending up, it's going to improve the speed for your property, and it's going to improve the speed overall for the interfaces out there. And not just with our property management system, just all GDS out there. So the idea here being, in Synexus, they have something called derived rates. And the other GDSs also have this as well, TravelClick, Inlinks, and Windsurfer. It may not be called derived rates, but something similar to our rate tiering. So what that allows you to do is, within Synexus, I can set up the AAA rate to be 10% off of bar. So we're setting up that same rate tiering or derived value within Synexus. What that means is I only need to send up the best available rate. And if I go over here, I'm going to unclick the uploaded. Notice that that turns green. Now, anytime we make a change within RoomKey, I'm only sending up the bar rate. I don't have to send up AAA rate. Now, up until I think a week ago that we put this in, the issue with this is we did have some hotels that wanted to send up restrictions even though the rates were not being uploaded. And we did not have that capability as of a week ago, but we actually put that in now that you can upload restrictions to rates. So see here where we have the checkbox to upload restrictions. What this does is, if I did want to go and put a minimum length of stay, let's say on our AAA rate of 2 nights for a certain weekend, that will now load up to the GDS. But certainly if we're only sending restrictions and not the whole rate plan, it's just going to save us on the amount of data. Anytime we can save on data, it's going to speed up the uptake for every hotel that we have. It's going to speed up the reservations flowing back down. Just overall, it's going to speed everything up. I'll tell you one example. We had one hotel that had 247 rate plans, and with using derived rates and restrictions, we were able to knock it down to 6 rate plans, 6 master rate plans that are being set up. That's a huge difference in the amount of data sending up. So it's a benefit for all. It's something we're going to be encouraging the hotels with a larger amount of rates to do. I'd like to see everyone take advantage of it because, again, it helps everyone to help speed up the GDS. Okay, so that's my talk on derived rates. So let's move on to group invoices. Now this is a small change, but I did feel it warranted showing. And this is actually live in the RoomKey shell right now. We put this in about a week and a half ago. Okay, so here I have this group, and the group is Talk World Discovery. This group is set up to have direct billing, so you're going to see the room and tax being on 8 folio for every guest with the group. Now, as we know, when we check out a group that is set up for direct billing, everyone with the group will go to the same invoice. So I'm going to do a couple of examples here. I'm going to go to Operations Groups. We're going to go to my group here, the 25th. We're going to open up the group. We'll go to number 7, checkout. And I'm going to do a checkout for the first 3 rooms, and we're going to direct bill them over to the City Ledger to Talk World Discovery. Now, I did just check this group in today, so it's saying early checkout because I checked them in today, checking them out the same day, but that's okay for this demo here. Okay, so for these 3 rooms, I'm going to click on checkout. And we still have 2 rooms in-house with that group. I'm now going to go to the in-house. I'm also going to take Andrea Hudden in room 201. I'm going to check her out individually. We're going to direct bill her room charges over to Talk World Discovery. Okay, so now, before I deal with Martin Clark here, we're going to go to Operations City Ledger, and we're going to take a look at the invoice. So I'll go down to Talk World Discovery, open the account. We're going to go into the invoice area, and here we can see on August 25th, invoice 1163, Talk World Discovery 082515. That's the group that I just did the checkout on. If I go to the transferred area, here we can see the first 3 rooms that we transferred over when we did the group checkout that went to the same invoice. And then Andrea Hudden, who we did the individual checkout on, she also went to the same invoice. So group billing, this is how it's set up, that everyone in the same group is going to go to the same invoice. And the invoice name is going to be the name of that group. So now let's say that we had one individual with the group, Martin Clark here, where we want to take Martin and put him on his own invoice. So I'm going to go to his folio, and instead of doing the checkout, we're going to use the City Ledger transfer function. So I click on City Ledger transfer. I'm going to add the transaction. If you're unfamiliar with the this feature, it does exist on the City Ledger document, the full instructions on this. So here I select the transaction. Notice it's highlighted green. And down the bottom, you'll notice that RoomKey defaults to say invoice selection, create new invoice. Here I'm going to click transfer. Transaction successfully transferred to City Ledger account. Okay. Now, this guest is still in-house. You still have to check the guest out. So know that the City Ledger transfer is just for taking care of those charges. So I would still, go the regular route of checking him out afterwards. So now if I go back over to the City Ledger area and I go to Talk World Discovery, we go to View Details, and we go to Invoices. See how that invoice transfer that we did on Martin Clark, now that individual invoice is under the guest name. And the change we made a few weeks ago was that when you did the City Ledger transfer, it was transferring over and keeping the name of the group. So you would have 2 invoices under Talk World Discovery 082515, not knowing which is on which. So this was the change that we made whenever you have to do an individual one. Okay, so that was a small change, but maybe a big impact if that's needed for your property. Okay, so let's talk about credit card storage. So credit card storage is a hot topic for PCI compliancy. RoomKey is PCI compliant, and we have just gone through another audit. So part of the PCI rules is you also have an audit. I believe it's every year that we have an audit, or twice a year that we have an audit on our system to make sure that we're keeping up with PCI standards and any changes that they may make. And one of the rules is about credit card storage, and credit card storage within note fields. So what we have found within that, or what the PCI scan had found, is that we have properties that are actually storing credit cards in guest note, reservation note, or over in the group note area. Big no-no. You can't store credit cards other than in the credit card field. So what's going to happen is with the new release, these credit cards are going to be searched out, and they're actually going to be masked whenever we have the notes, the credit cards within the 3 notes areas. So I believe I have an example here. In my no shows. There we go. So see here, I did have numbers in here, and now they have been masked. Okay, so part of PCI compliancy is ensuring that the credit card storage that we're doing in the system is not going to be open to any hacks. The credit card numbers can't be searched and found in any system. So there are lots of rules around that, of course. So that will be part of this release, that credit cards entered in these areas are going to be masked. Okay, next I'm going to talk about some new integrations we have and integration modifications. The first one I'll talk about is an M3 export. So for those of you who have M3 or may be interested in getting M3, they are a separate company from us, of course, but we do have an interface to them, which we've had for a number of years. It's an accounting export that we have. Now the thing that M3 does a little bit differently is they actually do deal with some statistical information as well as accounting information. So a couple of changes that we made now to the M3 export is we're now sending guest room numbers, so how many rooms were occupied per night. We're now also sending adults and children occupancy per night in the export. And the biggest change is for property management companies or condo management, we're now sending revenue by room number. So we're still sending revenue by room charge code for every other hotel that may just want overall revenue figures. But for property management, condo management properties who care more about seeing revenue per room number, that has now been included in the M3 export. So if your property is currently using M3 or interested in M3, there'll be some notes on how to contact M3 and what it's all about in the release notes tomorrow. Next integration I want to talk about is ResGo. Now ResGo is an activity management software. So here you'll see my little icon here, Open ResGo. Now, if you do not have the ResGo integration, you will not see this Open ResGo. I'm going to quickly demo this to see, certainly some people may not have ResGo, but it may be something they may be interested in after this. They are a third-party partner that we have. So I'm going to go to my arrivals, and I have a couple of arrivals. So I have Barry Anderson, Clark Kent, and Diane Lane. Now, as we can see, Clark Kent has the little ResGo icon here. This means that Clark already has some activities booked with ResGo, and if I go to my confirmation, I can see the ResGo activities charge here. Now, let's say that Barry Anderson wants to do some activities. So I go to Open ResGo. And again, the ResGo is not part of RoomKey line of products. It is a separate company that we deal with. So here we can see all the activities that we sell. So I have Seattle Great Wheel, Family River Rafting, and whatnot. So we can choose an activity. We're going to create the booking. Oh, sorry. I need to put number of adults I want, of course. Like I said, I'm the expert of RoomKey, maybe not the expert of ResGo. So here what we do is we send all the information from RoomKey, the guest name, address, email address, and everything. And ResGo is referencing our Res ID over here, so that when we save the changes, and we go back to RoomKey, you can see that we have the ResGo Anderson confirmation. We now have the ResGo activities attached to Barry Anderson. Okay, so it kind of works like a POS, a point of sale, except for its activity management and different activities you can sell. Okay, so the next thing I want to cover is some of the smaller tweaks and defects that we have addressed in this. So the first thing will be under System Configuration Rate Wizard. You can no longer create a rate plan with the same rate name. There was a way that people could do it that if they unclick every single channel, they could go in and they could create another rate under the same rate name, and just caused a whole bunch of errors and was crashing things. So that has been addressed in this release. Next is lockoffs. So if you use lockoffs, you'll see here my 2-bedroom best available rate is set as lockoff. From this point forward, I can no longer set another rate as lockoff. So the rule has always been you can only have one lockoff rate for ERES, our online booking engine. And if you create a second lockoff rate, it was breaking the first lockoff rate. So we always told the rule, but we never put in place the thing that would stop you from creating a second lockoff, which would break it. So we put in a stop that you cannot create the second lockoff rates. Next will be marketing opt-in. And this is when you're making a booking internally, we have the opt-in to marketing campaigns. So this is, the newsletters you may send out and whatnot. Now, currently on ERES, there is no area for the guest to put in yes or no for the email marketing campaigns. Now, this is something we are looking at putting in down the road, but it's not something we have now. So currently what happens is when the reservation flows from the ERES, these are unchecked. We've made the change looking at how most states are, and we don't know, the rules and regulations of every state, every province, every country that we deal with, but it seems that the most common one out there is you can automatically opt people in if there is no opportunity to ask the question. And then the first time that they get the newsletter, they can certainly opt out at that time. So there's always that secondary level when they first receive that newsletter or email blast that you send out, that there's a mechanism that they can opt out. So we made the choice that this will now be automatically turned on when the ERES reservations flow through. We have also done this for the GDS integrations that we deal with reservations that flow through. Now, some of the GDSs do have the opt-in, but it's turned off right now for our interfaces. So we've again made the decision that it would be a automatic opt-in. But again, the first time you send out that marketing campaign, they're going to have an opportunity to opt out at that point. Next was we did have a couple of properties that were reporting some difficulty with no-shows, not showing up or error messages between midnight and their rollover time. It did have to do with time zones and the way that time zones were set on our server in relation to where the property was at, mainly dealing with the time zones that don't do daylight savings, like Arizona, Saskatchewan, and our properties over in Asia. So some fixes have been made there for that period between rollover time and midnight. For the fix that we did on the Rate Wizard, the fix I'm talking about is where you cannot do a rate name the same as the other one. We actually had to go into the old rates area. And for the past month or so, if you went into the old rates area, if you're using new Rate Wizard, you've probably never been into the old rates area, and I would encourage you not to go into the old rates area and continue on with Rate Wizard. But for those hotels that may have been on RoomKey longer and kind of have a mix of two rates, or still using the old rates area, if you went to the inactive area, you would have noticed that all the inactive rates were hidden. We had to do that in order to fix the rate name duplication. Now that that's fixed, we've brought back inactive rates that you can see in here. Okay, next is guest notes. For those properties that are chained, so for instance here, I have a number of hotels chained, and there's a way that we can share guest information between the guest profiles. So Katie Wooten here would be shared with all the properties within my chain. The issue we were having is some of the guest note modifications that people were making were not flowing to the other hotels in the chain. The guest notes were flowing, but not the modifications. That bug has now been worked out, and our modifications on all guest notes are traveling across the chain with no problem. Next is the stay column. Sorry. Okay, next one is if I click on New Res, and not every property would have seen this, but we were having an issue with a blank rate plan name showing up, and it had to do with minimum length of stays, especially if you're using tiering where your master rate has a lesser length of stay than a tiered rate. So if a tiered rate has a minimum length of stay of 3, but the master rate has a minimum length of stay of 2, it was causing a conflict on which one to respect, and it was actually showing a blank rate plan name. So if your property experienced that, that is now gone, and you won't see it. If you don't deal with minimum length of stay, you probably never saw that happen. So next is the res notes. The res notes and the guest notes. So when you enter in the res notes, you have quite a bit of space that you can fit in here and do quite a long note. What was happening is on the reports, occupancy, arrivals, and in-house, those notes were getting cut off, so people were only seeing partial notes. So that's been fixed that you can now see the whole note. Do know that if you were doing the reservations, print guest notes, now this is only for arrivals that are coming in that day, those notes were not cut off. These were showing the full note. So it's only the changes to the notes on their arrivals and the in-house reports. Okay, and the last little tweak that we did, under Operations Activity Log, most times when we use Activity Log, we're probably looking up an individual reservation to see when it was created, what changes were made, and all that. But the secondary way that you can use this is you can do the today's date and choose a user and it'll kind of show every res ID or changes that they did to reservations that day. Now the problem is when you were printing this out, it was not displaying the username. So sometimes hotels will be sending out this, printing out 3 or 4 of these, but it didn't have the clerk name at the top, so they didn't know which one was for which one. So now we've made it that when you print this out, it will have the clerk name on there if you're using that method. Okay, so that kind of wraps up everything that I want to show you for this release. I'm going to go over to the question area. And, oh, I do see that someone had mentioned that my audio was breaking up around 2:57, around 10 minutes ago. I'm hoping that it didn't last too long for you guys and you were okay to hear that. Okay, so I'm going to open up the floor for any questions in regards to the what you've seen for the features here. If you don't have any questions, I would say you can probably dismiss yourself, and I do appreciate you attending today's webinar. We will put the recording up on our support page, and again, our release will be out. We're shooting for 11 a.m. Pacific time-ish, give or take any issues we may have with the release, but it's usually around 11 o'clock that we do so. So thanks everyone for attending again. I'm going to hang out for a bit in case there's any questions. I'm going to stop the recording